Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to another installment of An Old Testament Academic Reacts. Well, the people have spoken, and this week we are going to discuss the myth, the legend, the guy who may not have possibly existed, Darius the Mede. So if you guys like this sort of content and wish to see the channel grow, don't hesitate to hit the like button and subscribe. And if you guys wish to support the channel financially, I'll go ahead and leave a link to my Patreon in the description below. Now, Darius the Mede is certainly hotly contested and debated among biblical scholars, which is why we have various hypotheses. But I've narrowed down these hypotheses to 4 views put forth by scholars in an effort to reduce the video size. That is, I didn't want to create an exhaustive or lengthy video. So I will break down each of these views one by one, detailing what they are, and then finally, in the end, I will reveal which hypothesis I actually support. I'll also go ahead and list all my sources in the description below so you guys can check that out for yourselves. So without taking any more time, let's go ahead and dive into Darius the Mede. Now, first off, we have to ask ourselves, who was Darius the Mede? Well, according to Daniel, Darius the Mede ascended the Persian throne after the death of Belshazzar. Daniel 5:31 states that Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years of age. His first act as king was to appoint 120 satraps and 3 high officials, one of whom actually being Daniel. And the other high officials, though, conspired against Daniel, even petitioning the king so that no man could pray or appeal to their God. When caught, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den mentioned in Daniel 6, verses 10 through 16. This is the same Darius the Mede who was reigning when Daniel had also had his vision of the 70 weeks of years mentioned in Daniel 9. Unfortunately, though, scholars have long debated who Darius the Mede actually was, with some scholars going so far as to say that Darius the Mede of the Book of Daniel never existed. He was nothing more than a fictitious character meant to further the plot in Daniel. Darius is also not mentioned in any secular texts. That is, the Darius the Mede here is not mentioned in any secular texts, and not mentioned in conjunction with any Persian ruler. So the first view here is Darius the Mede is fictitious. This view is the common view or standard view among scholars since at least the 19th century. This view has a couple of motives which include historical and theological, in that the former is extra-biblical sources tell a varying account of Cyrus that simply does not recognize Darius the Mede. For example, Dr. Lester Grabbe argues that Darius the Mede could have been created by a person with only commonplace and trivial knowledge of things Persian, plus an acquaintance with the Old Testament prophetic literature. Now, what seems certain, though, from current knowledge is not only that no evidence has yet been found for Darius the Mede, but also that there is no place for his activities during and after the fall of Babylon. And Dr. Andrew Hill comments that Darius the Mede is nothing more than a literary fiction appropriate to the genre of court contest tale. Critics of this view dismiss the historical credibility of the Book of Daniel because of its theological motives and apocalyptic genre. Since they dismiss the historicity of the Book of Daniel, the dismissal of the historicity of Darius the Mede seems rather logical. Dr. Collins argues that the collection of stories is anonymous and fits well within A&E court narrative drama. However, Collins also states that the accounts found within the book resemble folk tales and legends. Additionally, he argues that the legendary quality of Daniel's stories, combined with the historical difficulties, that is, in Daniel 1 through 6, raise the possibility that these accounts do not need to be factual. Finally, most scholars consider the prophecies within the Book of Daniel to be ex eventu prophecies, that is, prophecies that have taken place after the event actually occurred, suggesting that the form in which the prophet casts history in the form of a prophecy is to comfort and encourage his audience. The next view is Darius the Mede is Gubaru or Ugbaru. Now, proponents of this view argue that Darius the Mede is Gubaru or Ugburu, who was the governor of Gutium and an ally with Cyrus. Cyrus the Great installed Gubaru as governor, hence his alliance with Cyrus. In their rigorous research, proponents of this view identified Darius with Gubaru because Xenophon mentions by name as well as the Nabonidus Chronicle and some Babylonian contracts. Additionally, this theory is seemingly based on the identification of the realm of the Chaldeans mentioned in Daniel 9:1 with the land of the Chaldeans, although in reality the realm of the Chaldeans encompassed more than just Babylonia. A proponent of this, Dr. Whitcomb, argued that Gubaru was a different person from Ugbaru because of the Nabonidus Chronicle, which recorded that Ugbaru had died merely 3 weeks before the fall of Babylon. He argues again that the cuneiform signs of Ug and Gu are different, which seemingly suggests these are two different people. The Nabonidus Chronicle itself states, in the month of Arash Shamnu, the 3rd day, Cyrus entered Babylon. Green twigs were spread in front of him. The state of peace was imposed upon the city. Cyrus sent greetings to all Babylon, and Gobryas, that is Gubaru, his governor installed governors in Babylon. In the month of Arashamnu, on the night of the 11th day, Gobryas died. Now, Whitcomb concludes, therefore, that because Gubaru and Ugbaru are not the same person, and that Gubaru was governor of Gutium, and that the location of Gutium is uncertain, but not likely located in Media, Gubaru could be this Darius the Mede. He continues saying that the Gobryas or Ugbaru mentioned by Xenophon in his Cyropedia depicts his Gobryas as an Assyrian prince who defected to Cyrus, thereby becoming governor of Babylonia, would be an unlikely candidate as Darius the Mede. So, for Gubaru himself, some Babylonian contracts, which are dated to the 4th year of Cyrus to the 5th year of Cambyses II, mention a man by the name of Gubaru, who was governor of Babylonia. Next up, we have Darius the Mede is Cyrus the Great. This view identifies Darius the Mede as Cyrus the Great. Now, this view is able to accept the conventional version of the Cyrus account and seemingly still affirm the historicity of Darius or Darius the Mede. The important thing, though, about this view is that it attaches the title of king with someone who actually was king. Unlike the previous slide I mentioned, Gubaru was not addressed as king. Proponents, particularly Dr. Wiseman, argue that Daniel 6:28 should be translated as, so this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius, and that is, during the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Now, they also argue that Cyrus's mother was the daughter of Astyages, who was in fact a Median king. That is, Astyages was the Median king, thereby allowing the possibility that Cyrus could also be called a Mede. Wiseman continues by stating the basis of the hypothesis is that Daniel 6:28 can be translated, Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, even namely, or for example, the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Such a use of the appositional or explicative Hebrew here of the Vav construction has long been recognized in 1 Chronicles 5:26, which states that, so the God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria, even the spirit of Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. Now, Wiseman goes on to say that this interpretation remains to examine how far Darius could be a byname of Cyrus in light of such statements as above. And though the word there, zera, in Daniel 9:1 means seed or descent, it is rather a gender-neutral term, so it could reasonably be argued that instead of maternal, it is actually paternal. And Wiseman argues that this is not surprising, because that the grandson of Cyrus I, through marriage of Cambyses I to Mandane, or of Mandane, should not despise or renounce a claim to be of Median descent, which is here implied in Daniel 9:1. Herodotus also represents Cyrus as a son of Mandane, of a Median princess, and Xenophon is heir to the Median throne. Moreover, Wiseman notes the appellation of Darius the Mede to Cyrus is rather odd here, but he nevertheless says that it could be a reason for the explanatory note in Daniel 6:28. Additionally, this note could possibly allude to the need of distinguishing the king of Darius II from Darius the Mede. Next up is Darius the Mede, Cambyses II. This view identifies Darius the Mede as Cambyses II, who was the son and successor to Cyrus the Great. This view depends on a co-regency between both Cambyses II and Cyrus the Great sometime before the death of Cyrus. Because Cambyses did have the title of king, he could therefore possess the role of King Darius after receiving the kingdom of Neo-Babylon, according to Daniel 5:31, which reads, "And Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old." Again, a reiteration of the same verse in the first slide. Dr. Charles Boutflower, a proponent of this view, argues that Daniel 9:1 alludes to a co-regency or a sub-king, to use his words. Furthermore, Boutflower argues that Darius is an appellative similar to Wiseman in the previous slide. But he differs from Wiseman here in that Gobrius was called king or described as having royal power, or rather only a governor. Moreover, Gobrius was not the successor to Belshazzar, which seemingly contradicts Whitcomb's view. Additionally, Boutflower notes the two rather peculiar titles, that is, Cyrus, king of Babylon, and of the countries. The first title, king of Babylon, belongs to Cyrus, whilst the latter title belongs to Cambyses II. Ergo, these two titles indicate or allude to two different individuals. Now, Boutflower also argues that though Cambyses the Mede was a Mede, but states that Persian kings had more than one name attached to them. Basing his defense on Herodotus and Josephus, Boutflower quotes the former. He, that is Cambyses, was the son of Astyages, and he had another name among the Greeks. Soon after which he states that Ctesias supports the quoted statement. He finds further proof, again in Josephus, that after the death of Xerxes, the kingdom came to be transferred to his son Cyrus, whom the Greeks called Artaxerxes, by which his monarch was known to the Greeks, is the same name that we find alike on monuments in Old Persian and in Babylonian contracts. He concludes then that Darius the Mede is this other name by which Cambyses came to be known. Next one is Darius the Mede is Cyaxares II. Proponents of this view have resurrected an older dating of the 19th to the 19th century, or of the 19th century, which the discovery of some cuneiform texts seemingly appear to support the account of Herodotus on the accession of Cyrus. Herodotus does not allow for the existence of Cyaxares II, who is described in Xenophon in Cyropedia. The description of Cyaxares II, though, fits well with the description of Darius the Mede, siding with Xenophon's account rather than Herodotus, according to Dr. Stephen Anderson. Now, Dr. Anderson also argues that Xenophon describes Cyaxares II as the last Median king and the uncle of Cyrus. Now, already, this view contradicts the views of Boutflower and Wiseman, in that the former argued for a co-regency, and the latter argued for Cyrus the Great. Xenophon states that Cyaxares II was king of Media and Persia, but the two were also allied. Anderson sees a harmony between Xenophon and Isaiah 45, 1 verse through 3, which states, "Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped, to subdue nations before him and to loosen the belts of kings, to open doors before him that gates may not be closed. I will go before you and level the exalted places. I will break in pieces the doors of bronze and cut through the bars of iron. I will give you the treasures of darkness and the hoards in secret places, that you may know that I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who calls you by your name." This would also harmonize extra-biblical accounts that describe Cyrus as the conqueror of kings and kingdoms, along with the book of Daniel. Again, Anderson notes that Xenophon states that Cyaxares lived just 2 years after the fall of Babylon, which appears to be enough time for the events of Daniel 6 to transpire. Since Cyaxares II had no male heir, and Cyrus married his daughter Amytis, Cyrus then inherited Cyaxares II's throne or position upon his death, thereby uniting the two kingdoms of the Persians and the Medes. Anderson goes on to say that although Xenophon, I accidentally spelt it with a Z, excuse me, only uses the name Cyaxares. Evidence does exist that Cyaxares II took the throne name of Darius. Additionally, evidence also exists that Cyaxares II's father was called Astyages and taking the name of Ahasuerus or Xerxes. Well, how do I take Darius the Mede? After going through each of the possible hypotheses, I mostly align with Dr. Anderson's hypothesis, and that Darius the Mede seems more likely to be Cyaxares II. I tend to find Xenophon rather reliable, despite the opposition's claim to the contrary, and furthermore, it is a matter of accepting the historicity of the Cyropedia for a couple of reasons. 3, actually. Firstly, Xenophon is seemingly more reliable when discussing the description of the childhood of Cyrus, the existence of Belshazzar, Gobryas, and finally the marriage itself between Cyrus and Cyaxares II's daughter. Secondly, the Babylonian contract texts date to the reign of Cyrus when he conquered Babylon. Interestingly here, the Babylonian contract texts omit Belshazzar, whom Daniel rightly states is the king. It seems likely here that since the contracts do not mention co-regents, that the Babylonian contract texts only mention Cyrus. Thirdly, the throne names Darius and Ahasuerus were rather typical of Persian rulers to adopt throne names that were different from their given names, according to Anderson. For example, the throne name of Artaxerxes I was Cyrus. Anderson also notes that a piece of extra-biblical evidence suggests that Darius was the throne name for Cyaxares II and Ahasuerus, as the throne name for Astyages is the use of these names by Darius Hystaspes, or Darius the Great, and his son Xerxes. Darius here may have been a usurper and not a legitimate descendant of Cyrus the Great. Unlikely, therefore, is the possibility that Darius would assume the throne name of Cyrus to legitimize his kingship. So, after all these views, which view do you side with? Do you side with Darius the Mede being Cyaxares II? Do you side with Darius the Mede being fictitious? Do you side with Darius the Mede being Cyrus the Great or Cambyses II? Let me know down in the comments below. Well, guys, that concludes our discussion here on Darius the Mede. So, as always, do not forget to hit the like button and, as always, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.